All right. Counting to three, more like counting to three repeatedly, being stern when making a point, or a pow pow, now are just some of the lax forms of punishment parents have been using on their kids. Back in the day, parents weren't afraid of spanking, swatting, or smacking their child without the fear of CPS getting involved. Children today have been raised on a much more lax punishment, and it seems as though the attitude and the behaviors are getting out of control. Some people prefer an old school approach, others feel that some of this punishment is too hard. Today I shall talk about child discipline in homes and why it should be up to the parent on how they want to punish their child, as well as how the lack of discipline is causing a lack of respect and responsibility. We begin with a common form of discipline and why parents don't use it. When it comes to punishing a child, spanking is a common practice. Spanking is defined as an act of slapping on the butt or a form of corporal punishment, and generally consists of striking the butt, and the recipient is usually a child or a teenager. Some parents are in agreement when it comes to spanking children. In a study done on whether or not spanking is good, 7 out of 10 parents fully agree with spanking, 2 out of 10 are disagree, and 1 is usually on the fence. Child discipline has become feared to be used by parents because of CPS. CPS stands for Child Protective Services. They're meant to interfere when child abuse is present. Nowadays, parents can't properly discipline their child without their kids or schools threatening to call CPS. Law enforcement officers tend to view child abuse and neglect not as a social problem, but rather than the content of criminal law, and in most states, all forms of reportable child abuse or neglect are crimes. There have been some instances where CPS has overstepped their boundaries when it comes to the way parents handle the disciplining of their child. For example, one woman in Ohio was taken to court for rightfully spanking her child, who was almost 3, because he decided to run away from his family in the middle of Kings Island amusement park. It was not overextended. She did not beat the child. She fairly gave him a few swats on the bottom, but there was already an accidental burning incident, so they were already observing the family. The judge ruled that because it wasn't to a certain extent and she didn't spank the child often, that the case was dismissed and let go. Most people in studies show that spanking a child has long-term and negative effects on children. The question is, how many of these researchers were punished as a child growing up? It seems odd that people who were spanked and ended as very capable and respectful adults are trying to justify that spanking is wrong. Kids who aren't punished have a lax environment are kids who feel they can get away with anything because they don't know any better. Case in point, a 16-year-old here in Texas gets away with killing 4 people, 4 innocent bystanders that were standing by an idle vehicle because he was drunk driving. His BAC limit was 3 times the legal limit, and he did plead guilty and suffered from affluenza, which basically means that his wealthy lifestyle and lack of discipline and punishment means he didn't know any better. He didn't know right from wrong and got away with it. He's only serving about 10 years probation and no jail time for when he reaches the age of 18. This is the same boy who was found passed out drunk with an undressed 14-year-old female in his back of the truck. And he got away with it too. And yet the parents instilled no punishment in him. Although I am not a parent myself, I know that my husband and I will raise our kids the same way we were raised. Honestly, I feel that the tightening of rules and the laws on child's punishment, such as spanking, is unnecessary. We as parents and future parents are allowing CPS and the government to intervene and control how our kids are raised. In Kansas, a state rep, Gail Finney, she's a Democrat, states she wants to restore parental rights and improve discipline. This would allow parents to spank their children with an open hand no more than 10 times. But would restrict the use of belts, switches, or closed fists. Although I don't agree with her proposal for teachers and caregivers able to spank the child enough to leave bruises, I prefer that the punishment be left alone to parents. I'm sure most people in this room are punished by their parents one way or another, and yet they seem to be well-rounded adults and respect others. Some may also continue the ways their parents chose to discipline their children as they have been disciplined. Spanking when needed and not overdone can help guide a child into proper adult. Parents shouldn't be afraid to spank their child just because they're threatened to call CPS. Our parents and our parents' parents were spanked growing up, and they turned out just fine. Shouldn't our future kids be raised the same way if their parents choose to do so?